everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and this is a SAAB 900 Carlsson. Perhaps the ultimate evolution of the 900. Just 600 were produced. Now, to understand why this is a performance car like no other, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the 900, which was itself the last car ever entirely produced by SAAB. There are four main things to be aware of. The 900 was just a facelifted version of the 99. It basically had a longer front end to meet US safety regulations. So if we count the 99, which is basically the same car, this was in production for a staggering 26 years. These crazy Swedes really did do things their own way. So it's a longitudinal engine, but it is tilted at 45 degrees. Not only that, but it's the wrong way round. So the crank is pointing out towards the front of the car. That drive has to be switched around by the gearbox underneath through a chain and pulley system back through to redistribute the power to the wheels. A very, very unusual system, as is the mechanism for closing and opening this bonnet. It's almost a work of art in itself. Why just have one hinge when you can have a wholly different system like this? The door sills are also unusual. They're sort of cut inwards, and then you have the bottom of the door actually sealing underneath. So that means that A, it's much easier to get in and out, and the sills don't get covered in dirt. The quirkiness though doesn't end there, because you normally have your key up here. In the SAAB, it is down on the transmission tunnel. That is because in the event of a crash, you're much less likely to damage your knee. It also meant, as a side thing, that you don't have a steering lock on these. So to take the key out, it needs to be in reverse. So that's the safety feature that they engineered in anti-theft. Also, and this does make sense really, but unusually the parking brake acts on the front wheels. I think in the very late cars they changed it, but in most of them it acts on the front wheels. Why would they do that? Normally on all cars it's on the back. Because all the weight of the car is at the front. So if you want to make sure the car is safe and held in place safely, then it makes sense to have the parking brake on that side. The unusual shape of the 900 is there for a reason. This lip is designed to be very aerodynamically efficient. Indeed, I think this was one of the best cars aerodynamically of its time. And SAAB were keen to always point out their links to their military division that made jet fighters. So this is all part of that package. But now, let's get back to how it drives. The standout model, of course, of the 900 was the Turbo. They had different names in different countries. In Europe, it was known as the T16S, the model with the most power, 175 horsepower. In America, I think it was the SPG. This one, though, has 185 horsepower, and it has the red top, what's known as the red top controller. These were also the first cars to monitor and change and level boost control. It was called the APC system that SAAB introduced, and there was a knock sensor, and the system would vary the boost accordingly. You also have to bear in mind that although not the first turbo car, the Porsche 930 was the first sort of mass production car, this was a turbo car that wasn't even a sports car, it was a passenger car. Let's see how that 180 horsepower feels today. Procession of cars. Right, let's go. It still feels pretty rapid. You get a little bit of torque steer, which is evident there, but this really moves. Now it's interesting because this was a press car at the time. It was featured in Autocar in 1990, and although they gave it a good write-up, they did say that they were a little bit taken aback because it didn't feel as fast as they thought it should. I think 0 to 60 was only 8.6 seconds. I'm sure that that is down in part to the difficulty it has in putting the power down. It does tend to wheel spin quite easily. But through the gears, the mid-range really is pretty good. And unlike some of the other turbo engines of the era, this really does have a revvy feel to it as well. It's very happy to go up through the revs. It's a smooth engine, quite surprising in feel compared to other turbos of the 80s and the 90s. Now, I said the Carlsson was the pinnacle. It was a UK only model, but essentially you would take a T16S, which was the flagship. To that they added a specific body kit, bits on the interior like specific seats, this wheel with the Carlsson logo, the various stickers. The suspension was lower and stiffer with thicker anti-roll bars. It had twin exhausts at the back, and of course an extra 10 horsepower with the different red top APC. If you want a 900, this is pretty much the most desirable model out there, followed I guess by the T16s. To get a usable T16 nowadays, you're probably looking at around £10,000. These Carlssons are worth quite a bit more money. Are they worth it? How does it feel? How does it drive today? Well, for a start, I am absolutely in love with the individuality of this car. From the exterior, the way it looks, this incredible curved front screen that gives you so much visibility, to the way the interior is thought out, it's just solid, it's not flash. Everything still works on here. Everything feels sort of Tonka car-like. They put the radio right at the top there because that's the thing you would use most often and you wanted to have access to, so you wouldn't have to look down. It's all angled towards the driver. The instruments are lovely and clear with all those different coloured sort of needles. It's just got a very specific Swedish charm. How does it feel to drive? Well, let's do one more pull and then see what it's like on the twisties as well. Because at the time, these were liked, but I think that journalists were a little bit ambivalent overall on the handling. First of all, massive wheel spin in first and in second gear. And a little bit in third with a little bit of tugging on the wheel. Now it's settled, but that engine feels very, very strong. The steering is lovely. It's so nicely weighed. I think it feels, the speed of it feels right for the way the car behaves. Lots of feedback, and in the corners here, you can kind of feel a little bit like it wants to push wide. I think that's also because it has the engine in front of the front axle. So when you're driving at about 70%, you don't notice it. When you get closer to the edge of grip, it does feel like it wants to plow forward a little bit, but there's quite a lot of grip. Although it doesn't have grip in a straight line when you're putting the power down, in the corners there's a fair amount of grip there. It has Bilstein B6s, which are pretty much go-to replacement shocks for most sort of sporty classic cars. So they're not vastly different. I think it also has Abbott springs, so it's a bit stiffer than standard, and it drives very, very well. If you're driving it to the edge, it becomes a bit less satisfying, but just driven quickly, it is really, really nice. It's got that solidity about it. So back in the day, these are sort of, the 99 anyway, was 30% stiffer than its rivals, and even now, it has that feeling of solidity that you get maybe in a 911 of a similar era. Now, I guess the one thing that you might criticize, or you might see as a bonus in a way, is there really is quite a lot of turbo lag. Even if you keep it in the revs and you put your foot down, there is still the rev range where the turbo is kind of active. There is a bit of a delay. And lo and behold, if you do that at anything below sort of 2.5, you're really kind of sitting there waiting for it to do anything. Then again, if you want a car like this, which is so individual, that's really got to be part of the charm, right? It's old school, but it's not as bad as it would be in a 930 or, you know, a 911 or some of the other turbo cars of the time, because they weren't quite chasing horsepower figures with these. So it's a bit more responsive than some, but there is still a definite delay. I absolutely love it. I always had a soft spot for these, but I don't think I've ever actually driven one before, not that I can remember. And it hasn't let me down. I would love to have one, I think, as a daily. I think one of the next cars I buy to own for a while has to be a 900. They're so individual. So it takes me back to the day when cars, or some manufacturers at least, could make cars that were markedly different to the others. Of course now, they're all so similar cars, they're all so different, it's a whole different world. So the nostalgia angle with these 900s is really particularly strong. And this is a lovely, lovely car. I really like it a lot. If you have a car that you'd like me to do a review on, maybe one of the earlier SAABs, a 99, or one of the others that came before that, please get in touch with me. This is the best way. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Paul for bringing down this fabulous, fabulous Carlsson. I mean, what a car. Thank you, and see you for the next video.